This is Securing Success, where we get to know the professionals that make up the cybersecurity sector. Today, we're talking to Gramatech's Chief Growth Officer, Ray DeMeo. Ray brings a wealth of global executive leadership experience, including founding a security company and now is leading growth for an organization that's made huge contributions to security innovation in the defense and intel sectors. Ray, we have a lot to talk about. I'm excited. So let's jump right in. Sound good?
Great, Mark. Yeah, great. Very good. Thank you for this chance to catch up and to do it in this kind of recorded setting. Look forward to it. Look forward to the conversation.
Excellent. So you've been leading global initiatives for tech companies for about 25 years. It sounds like a long time, but we all know it goes quick. So I really want to pick your brain on looking back. Do you think you could have predicted the extent of innovation that's taking place in tech today?
In a word, no. So much has happened. So much has changed. I've been fortunate to be part of several exits, small to large, large to small, and through all of them, we've watched. Who would have predicted so much moving to cloud and then to container, and now the edge environment, compute at the edge, this drive, this priority to convert data collected at the edge into knowledge distilled at the edge for decision making in far-flung locations, as an example, and can go on. But sure, it's been quite a ride. I think the takeaway, though, is it's not slowing down anytime soon. It's just this past year has been pretty exciting. Glad to talk about any element of that. Yeah, it's an adventure.
So a lot of people watching this are going to know, but just in case, explain high level. What do you mean when you say the
edge? Well, consider, so I live right now, you're talking to me, I'm not too far away from Cape Canaveral, Florida. So the Space Coast. And just about every week we're watching a new launch go up, right? Satellites in space, in orbit, very much part of the edge. Ships at sea, the edge. Drones, remote locations that are far corners of the earth. Those are all places where compute is as relevant in those situations, in those locations, maybe even more so than it is in the traditional data center, brick and mortar, physical location. So, sure, they've had all these environments have had some sort of communication or sensor for a good number of years now. But now this ability to collect information, say just back to satellites, imagery, and then distill what are we actually seeing? What is useful data that can then all of a sudden become actionable for, say a commander who's on the ground in a combat situation. Does that data, in a traditional sense, have to be transmitted all the way back to some brick and mortar location, or can actionable decision knowledge come from that and be done in near real time? That changes everything. That is really what the whole world is pushing for right now. The next part of that, though, on a side, just to add on the cybersecurity side, is, well, okay, that's pretty important data and pretty important knowledge. How do you secure those environments? How do you ensure that those environments aren't compromised? So that's where a lot of my attention is right now on that front.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about a use case of a commander in a combat zone, you certainly don't want the enemy to be hearing what knowledge they're receiving from whatever actionable intel they're getting. So that makes a lot of sense. I think you were pretty deliberate in saying knowledge versus data and that initial thought that you had. So when we talk knowledge, are you saying there's going to be some sort of AI that transmits what this data is into actual knowledge for a commander, or what do you mean by knowledge specifically when you talk about it?
Yeah, for sure. I was trying to not be yet another person using that term because it is so common. But yes, of course, it is. That's exactly what it is. We are right in the thick of that as well. We're using AI and our really decades of research and capability in that space to we're using it largely in pursuit of better cybersecurity solutions and protective measures. But ultimately, it's going to touch really everything. I'm talking about it on the cyber side. Converting data to knowledge is absolutely an operational use case, which is important to so many. That is the root of it. And then how do you start to push that capability into further and further distant locations?
Now, it may be an interesting or overly broad question, but we've talked to the extent of the technology that's changed and evolved and how it's being used at eye level now. Do you have anything to comment on in terms of how the business around this technology has changed with this rapidly evolving environment? Do you have any input there?
Oh, sure. Thoughts on this front. How has business changed, and how has the approach to moving from concept to development to deployed product capability? I'll say this: and it is also very relevant to things that are happening even in recent weeks with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's call for. So now it's secure by demand is their latest paper and call to action from the larger. So this is not just government. This is industry, commercial industry as well. They started out, and so maybe in the early stages. Well, certainly in the early stages, we were all so excited about this ability to have access to so much knowledge so readily over the internet, no matter where you are, and then via mobile, and then, wow, that's pretty exciting. Just give me more. Just give us more. As we reflect back, a lot of oversight or insufficient attention to the need to secure, right? So there's this call for secure by design. How do you build that in up front? So that is a change. It comes really, now the reports, now the metrics are out there. It's between 30 and 100 times, big range there, but even 30 times more expensive to fix a gap, a vulnerability in the field versus pre-deployment. So that's a change. That's not even reflecting, by the way, all the tools a customer has to buy to try to field these, attacks on these vulnerabilities that get built in. Mm-hmm. And so there's a change, secure by design. Then there's that's moved forward into secure by demand, asking not only vendors to think about designing up front, but now customers to say, this is an expectation. This is something that really vendors, you owe me as a paying customer. Don't sell me that car without airbags and seatbelts. Now I'm aware of why those are important. And so this is a change. There's a lot of energy going into this. I'll say this as well, as we start to think about the future, as we start to think about how do we springboard into all of the exciting things that are happening around data analytics, massive data sets, and how you turn that data into knowledge, as we just spoke about. Certainly AI right in the mix of making all of that happen. We're all very much aware, we need a strong foundation. As painful as it is to fix this IT foundation or the existing deployed environments, we really need to do that. We need to do that for everything that is being put out as new product, new capability, or existing products that we're like, hey, we want to keep this capability around. The system that runs my critical infrastructure, medical, hospital operating environment, for example, oil and gas pipeline. No one's going to throw that stuff away. But how do we make it compatible with modern systems and modern requirements and even modern threats? So that's bringing it back to your question. That's so much of how I think the sophistication of buyers and the hiring the bar of suppliers, of vendors, as to what they what they're obligated to deliver to paying customers. That has changed, and there's a big human element and big human component of this. At the end of the day, this is this is you and me. What do I owe you as a supplier? What do you expect from me as legitimately expect from me as a customer? So those calls to action are getting louder, and it is helpful that there are. This is rising all the way up to, one more. I want to continue to build on this. There was a press release from the White House in February of this year from the Office of the National Cyber Directorate, which comes under the White House. This importance of moving to memory-safe code. That seems pretty nerdy, really, doesn't it, to come from the White House? That's whoever thought that a White House press release would be telling people what kind of code they should be using in products that get developed. The world has changed. That, I think, is maybe the flagship example. But what's it based on? A metric, just to make that to make that resonate a little further. 70% of vulnerabilities across all of the commercial and government systems are tied back to this use of code called C++, which has been out there for decades. People have, for the most part, been aware that, it's kind of like riding a unicycle on a tightrope. It requires a very adept level of expertise, and it's very prone to making errors. And everyone's like, but I got to get it out. I got to deploy it. I got to ship it. We'll get to that later. We'll put some sort of patch in the field later on. 70% is a pretty big number. 70% could be made to go away. And so then if you think about 70% of risk, 70% of cost expenditure in the field, not necessarily direct one-to-one correlation, but that's a big enough number that it's meaningful at the other end. And certainly in terms of customers who now have to report to, if you're a public company, you now have to report to the SEC for major breaches. These are all touch points on how the world has changed. I think it's changing for the better.
You really just sparked a thought, right? Because we track all the funding and acquisitions for cybersecurity vendors. A lot of people ask me, like, well, what's driving this, right? Average funding volume that we tracked this year has been about 27 funding rounds per month. Most of those funding rounds tend to be seed, Series A, and Series B, so really early stage companies. And so people are like, well, why do you think that is? And quite frankly, I don't know, right? I just record the data. We see what's happening. You've just given me a window, Ray. Maybe it's because of this constant evolution, this constant raising the bar in terms of customer requirements, federal government mandates. It's keeping the option open for continuous growth and evolution in the technology. And I mean, it makes so much sense when you recap it and hear yourself saying it, but you were able to communicate that in a way that I don't think a lot of people really do.
Well, here's here's what always, thank you firstly, and here's something that resonates with me. If you think about, I don't know how often you fly. I fly a fair bit, but I rarely think twice about, is this plane going to make it to the other end, right? The
Otherwise, you would have a tough time.
Yeah, right. And so I looked this up for a presentation, and in 2023 we had 853 million passengers in the U.S. So that's a lot of passengers. 763 billion commercial air miles without a fatality. Crazy, right? You're like, well, I don't know. You're flying in the air, weather, ice, other airplanes. How do you not? Why are we not scared to death about falling to the ground? It's because so much thought has been put into how do you make this secure? What are all the possible outcomes? How do you design with that? Well, back to secure by design. It's not that we've never done this before. We've totally done it before. Nuclear is another example. Medical to an extent. we understand what has to be done. The excitement and the energy to get so much IT infrastructure out there has maybe skipped over that a little bit. It's entirely doable to crush down the amount of, and certainly dramatically reduce the size by thinking more in the forefront. So as far as these companies, these funding rounds go, I mean, we were at the forefront of doing software bill of materials. We sold off a division that commercialized that capability early on. We recently took another contract for doing firmware bill of materials, which is the next layer down, the glue between application software and hardware. This is, it's entirely capable. There's the fund. It's exciting to see the funding go into places where we fix the problem up front rather than band-aiding the problem on the back end. And so
the bill of materials, we're talking supply chain, basically. Is that right?
Supply chain, absolutely.
All right. So let's explain that to anybody who doesn't know or is unfamiliar with this terminology. What is supply chain as it relates to technology and cybersecurity?
Oh, love it. Great question. All right. I'll nerd out a little bit for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So back to that airplane. When you're sitting in your seat, and say you have a window seat, and you look out and you see that wing of the airplane, you can look down, and if you can see a rivet out on the wing, that rivet has an identification number. You can pop that thing out. You can find documentation that says where it was made, when it was made, who made it. You can even trace it back to the raw ingot of metal that it was cast from, and what the purity of that metal was. I mean, that's true for every component in an airplane. You can go back to the wiring, any component, and of course even the software in those environments. That's end-to-end traceability. Where did it come from? Who touched it along the way? That is a huge challenge now in the software world. Open source software dominates. It is very easy. It's also very efficient for developers to take code that addresses a certain need, a certain use case, build that into their larger solution. Hey, it's out there on the internet. It's free. The difference is that code, you cannot assume that code has been put through any kind of quality assurance rigor, any kind of validation that it doesn't have vulnerabilities. I mean, look, it's already a big win for any developer that you have this code. It's available. It's out there. You can use it. It is an obligation, however, that you take that and you put some measure of rigor into what its quality is, what its reliability is, and then you can put it in your solution, and then you can sell it for money to an end customer who's going to pay you for it, expecting that it does the job that you've advertised it performs. So, I mean, there's a quick synopsis on supply chain. There's a lot of funding that's gone into companies that startups in particular that have figured out how to put a level of automation and ease of use and ease of integration into developing a software bill of materials. So, just for clarity, that's that list. It says, okay, what is it? Where did it come from? Who made it? And when? And what is effectively its lineage? So there you go. There's a short primer for anyone who might not be familiar with software bill of materials, but it's absolutely consistent and appropriate and necessary for anyone who cares about the mission integrity, the ultimate outcome of any product or service that you buy that has IT as a fundamental component.
So what do you think? All right, I mean, I'm going off a little bit from what I initially thought we'd talk about, but this is pretty interesting, right? Is it worth utilizing open source software, open source code, if you have to go and do this rigorous check, or should you just build it? You know exactly who's building it so you can develop the product internally.
Sure, great conversation. We could do a whole hour on this, but look, it's totally worth it. There's so much talent globally, worldwide, doing amazing and very putting putting all of this talent and contribution into software. It's wasted talent and effort if you're just rebuilding the same thing over and over again from scratch. The cost, if you think of, well, gee, what's the cost for me to build something from scratch versus which you have to QA anyway, to what is the cost for me to take this code and then impart the inspection, the quality assurance, the level of rigor that is needed for it to fulfill my mission. And so there's a delta there. There's a delta. It's still less work. It should be, on average, less work to make sure that it does the job the right way, and versus having to develop totally from scratch. There are situations where some might say, well, I don't know, this open source code is too complex. The amount of time it would take me to reverse engineer it and understand what it does. Maybe I will develop it from scratch. There's one other dimension to it, and that is that open source code, by nature, because it's available to so many people and it's accessible to open source communities, it has a lot of people. This is one of Linus Torvalds' famous, one of his famous rules or statements is that because it's seen a lot more, it's touched a lot more, it's more likely that things are going to get addressed or fixed. Not sure evidence supports that 100%, but it is true. More eyeballs, to the extent that more eyeballs see it, likely more things will be fixed. It doesn't mean it's perfect code. That's what I mean when it doesn't mean you get perfect code, but it's better. Think about this. Think about how many people use Microsoft Excel versus some, I don't know, are there homegrown spreadsheets out there? I don't know, maybe there are, but there's no way it's ever going to get the same level of feature request or of people saying, identifying bugs or things that need to get fixed. So that's it. There's definitely room for and need and value in open source. It's just that it's not appropriate. I think the borders, the wall, the bar is set at the point where you say, I'm going to take that, which I got access to probably for free, and now I'm going to incorporate it into my solution and charge someone else money. The obligation is on you to fix any gaps, identify gaps, invest in addressing, knowing how that works end to end, addressing any gaps, addressing any vulnerabilities, and then making sure that you've delivered a quality product.
Ray, you are a chief growth officer. What does that mean, and why are you qualified to tell me all this right now?
Yeah, sure. Kind of nondescript in a way. Of course, it's about revenue. Of course, it's about success for our business, and in this case, our company, Gramatech. I'm also responsible for product, and so that's, you can't have growth if you don't have a product offering, a service offering, a brand awareness, which is also falls under my scope. So it's understanding what our core capabilities are, nudging, it's evolving, it's pushing hard, it's nudging on some cases and pushing hard on the other to develop those minimum viable products, those enhanced products, those services in support, and ultimately the capability that results in solid revenue growth. And it's really the former part that drives the latter part. If you do it well, they will come.
And that's the product roadmap. Is that former part you're talking about?
Yeah, the product and services. So I say it in this case in that we do some pretty exciting things. We've touched on edge environments and securing edge environments. We've touched a little bit on migration to memory safe code. We do that. We automate that at speed, and we also actually ultimately make it go faster. Everyone's like, well, will it perform as well? Yeah, it'll perform multiple times faster on average in our experience, and get rid of 70% of vulnerabilities. So those are a couple of examples. We touch on AI, so I'll mention, we are honored to have received an award
And
from
real quick,
DARPA.
when you say we, is that Gramatech you're talking about now?
Oh, it is, yeah. So
Okay.
when I say we, I'm talking about the company. So I'm talking about Gramatech. We were honored to receive an award from DARPA to take our existing capability of finding vulnerabilities in code and then adding large learning models, so LLM AI into that to make it leapfrog yet again in terms of capability of identifying vulnerabilities in open source code. So you asked me questions that actually do come back to really, fortunately, where we're right in the middle of building these capabilities, delivering these capabilities, and it's an exciting time.
You and we've known each other a while now, Ray. And when you were transitioning out of your last company, exploring this next move, we talked about a couple of options you may have had on the table. You obviously have a lot of insight into this industry. You've got experience. Why did you choose Gramatech? What is it doing beyond what you just communicated to me? What is it doing that you were just like, this is awesome, I got to go to this?
So I'll paraphrase Vince Lombardi, who
Love it.
has famously said, right? He's famously said, look for talent, look for places that have high amounts of talent and yet unrealized potential. And so really we've got some of the smartest people in the world of cyber. We've got some PhD level talent that is really regarded, well published, regarded not only amongst government environments, but really worldwide. You can always check out some of our publications if that's of interest to you. But then we've been really working on, none of what I've described is brand new. We've been working on these different aspects of capability for years, and it's just now as these come together in the need to be able to accelerate. Take data, turn it into knowledge, secure those environments, secure the underpinning, build in integrate with and connect with cyber physical environments, which ultimately, which more often than not are the output of these, the output of these systems. That is very much what the company is about, what our roadmap is about, and it's very exciting to work with this really deep bench strength of talent and capability. So sure, that's what to look for for anyone listening, and for any environment you might pursue. Look for the deep bench strength in talent and capability. Look for opportunity as it aligns with the larger global need, global ecosystem, and that turns into that reflects unrealized potential. That is first one there wins, right? Be the first one there, and that's an exciting place to be.
It's fun because you have all this knowledge, you understand, or at least have a decent sense of where things are going, and you still bring it back to the people element, right? Who are the people? What does the talent look like at these organizations? And so a lot of people ask me for my opinion. Where's the industry going? What type of company should I join? Should I go to a startup? Should I look at bigger companies given the marketplace? And my thought process is go where you're comfortable, go where you can work with these people, you believe in the vision, right? Something along those lines is typically what I'll answer with. And you've completely validated that, not just for the people I talk to, but for me as well, right? You want to make sure you're giving them the right advice. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because all this tech, all this quote unquote, and if anybody's just listening and not watching, I'm doing air quotes here, all this quote unquote AI, it's still people business, it's still people world, and that's what's so important, and we can't get rid of that.
By all means, absolutely nothing works if you can't make the team work.
So I was, Ray, I was excited when we talked initially about Gramatech, and I did a little bit of research. We talked, um, you mentioned the win at the DARPA AI Cybersecurity Challenge. You mentioned the competition at DEF CON. Tell people what are those competitions, what are those challenges, and what does that success mean to your company?
Sure. Firstly, it's an honor to have been, selected and funded to participate. For those, for this audience, you're deep into the cybersecurity community. DEF CON is the coming together of the deepest minds, really, as far as conferences go. How do you bring that talent? This is where you go, right? This is the pilgrimage, and so the hats off to DARPA for funding this effort. For anyone who went to DEF CON this year, you would have noticed that it was called AIXCC. It was the Artificial Intelligence Cyber Challenge, and it's the follow-on to a challenge 6 years ago, which was called the DARPA Grand Challenge. Which, by the way, 6 years ago we came in second place, and
Nice.
it was the opportunity, it was the request, it was the mandate to now implement artificial intelligence. How are you going to make the world of cybersecurity better? And you and I didn't talk about this, but it's about how do you take this capability and apply it against open source code to figure out if there's weaknesses, if there's vulnerabilities, trying to really largely automate, bring a level of speed to this need and this want to be able to adopt open source. So it validates your earlier question about should it even be used versus homegrown, custom in-house. So absolutely. And then who can do it? Who can do this, and who can bring these new solutions to bear? And again, it's not only for government use, but it's for the larger commercial and global ecosystem. And so that's why it was exciting to participate. It was also, for anyone who went there this year, it was obviously they built, if you're familiar with DEF CON, they build individual villages for different kind of cyber pursuits. It was the most elaborate, it was the most well-funded, and visual displays, individual demonstrations, running scoreboard. This whole effort to really educate the world and everyone who attended on the value of this pursuit. So there you go, a little bit about it, and there's a lot more. There'll be more to come from us as a result of the capability that we developed specifically for this. There were a lot of participants. There were like 40, I believe. So you can see how it's not just us, but there's a groundswell of participants and of capability that will come forward from it. So
that's great. You've done so much, Ray, over your career, and I mean it's palpable when I see you via video here, your excitement. So what keeps you energized? What maintains this excitement? Why do you want to keep walking into these pressure cooker environments and dealing with the stress? Why? What motivates you? What keeps you going?
Well, Mark, thank you for giving me credit for being sane. There's probably a missing chromosome there somewhere, as far as like keep coming back into it, because these are the harder. There's something very fun about being at the forefront. There's something very rewarding, self-actualization at the top of the pyramid about being able to do something new or innovate with something new that the world then adopts. And so that's it. I think in a nutshell, I'll bring it back to the people. It's being surrounded. It never happens as a soldier of one, right? It happens being surrounded by people who are probably all missing that same chromosome in to the extent that they have they build and advance and in many ways pave the ground for this next wave of innovation, and we see that happening. Data analytics, AI on top of data analytics, movement to knowledge, movement to speed. Where that's going to take us in terms of everything from self-driving cars to robotics to everything that is existing and going to exist in orbit and on the moon and on Mars. It's not. These are all building blocks, really, for that capability.
And you got the Ray DeMeo stamp on some of those building blocks, and that's got to be exciting. And I can't wait to continue having these types of conversations with you. I'll be following Gramatech for sure. And I appreciate you taking the time just to spend with us, have this conversation, inform people on some of the things that maybe they don't know what's happening in the marketplace. So thank you very much, Ray. It was good talking to you, and good luck with all your ventures and innovation.
Excellent, Mark. Thank you. And your stamp as well. You're feeding the engine with the human capital to make it happen. So, pleasure talking with you. Thank you very much. Always glad to do this. And I look forward to next opportunity to get together.